We are looking at the economic activities. Despite the suppression of economic activities endured by Nigerians due to the scarcity of the redesigned Naira notes, the nation inflation figures rose in February to 21.91%, posing questions on whether the cashless policy introduced by the government achieved its goal. Owing to an increase in the cost of food and fuel, February Consumer Price Index posted a month-on-month change of 1.71%, a slower climb when compared with the 1.87% recorded in January. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, latest reports released yesterday, on a year-on-year basis, the headline inflation rate was 6.21% higher compared to the rate recorded in February 2022, which was 15.70%. This shows that the headline inflation rate increased in February when compared to the same month in the preceding year. We have in the studio a friend of the house, as always, Dr. Emeka Okengu, an economist, to discuss this development and the rising inflation amidst Naira scarcity. Thank you very much for joining us once again.
Pleasure.
I bet at a very short notice.
Thank you very much.
And eating into other very pressing engagements of yours. When these inflation figures came out, well, at first, the drivers of the redesign policy, whether it's the president or the CBN governor, adduced several reasons why Nigerians should have a buy-in. One of the several ones was the fact that they had hoped that it would take a chunk of inflation numbers and all of that. And then we saw the inflation nosedive slightly in December, which was looking like their projection was going to come true, but the reverse was the case. In January, it shot up, and we were hoping that by February, when it had really beaten us so hard that people had given up on the use of the Naira, we had hoped that the indices would return different, but no, it continued the rise. And Nigerians are wondering, can we honestly say at this point that we have had any positive effect from this Naira redesign policy on the economy?
Well, the first, you just described one sector of the Nigerian economy, which is the formal sector. So all the statistics that have been reeling out, are statistics of the sector that you can mark. And remember that the formal sector of Nigeria constitutes less than 20% of the Nigerian economy or the Nigerian economy ecosystem. Now you're looking at the real sector, which nobody is able to track and capture. I don't know if you mentioned that the food inflation is about 24%.
That's right.
Now this is in the formal markets. Now when you go into those informal markets, or where you have the people who are unbanked, that's actually when the reality, begins to hit you. And I haven't put that as a rider. Now we come to the reasons you gave for the Naira redesign. I think the primary reason is not to check inflammatory measures. The primary reason was to bring back money into the banking system. Where you had 3.2 trillion, circulating, and only 600 billion of all that was within the banking system. Okay, so I think the first consideration was to be able to rein in, pull in, those excess of about 2.7 trillion. Okay, that was the first consideration. And then against those considerations, two elements came in. Element number one is that we are also going to be making certain that these monies are not going to be used for things that are untoward. And in that case, those untoward things came towards people stockpiling it. This is how the politics thing, the angle it came from. Okay, that people had kept money, over a very long period of time that they wanted to use in subverting the popular will of the people. And then the second was crime and criminality. So when you talk about inflation, which is what your question is, I needed for us to be able to establish this background, it simply has to do with your productive capacities. If you are not producing, there is no way. It will be like somebody who has HIV or hepatitis, and then you say, what we're going to do? Let us start praying. Prayer will go. Prayer is to restore your confidence that you can be healed. But the moment you require medical protocol, trust me, we need to go for that protocol and then support your healing process with prayer. You understand it? So it's what you now have is a question where you now have, the thing turned upside down. Okay, so first and foremost, we are even lucky. And again, like I said earlier, if you put the real numbers, we won't be talking 24%. We won't be talking 21%. Because first, remember that you're supposed to be juxtaposing people's expendable capital. Now, what it means is that for you to be able to now have expendable capital, you have to have it. Okay, so what about those who don't have this capital at all? And then, if you look at your salary, for instance, I want us to be practical about, trying to now put this thing into proper perspective. I don't know how much, you're earning, but let's put your salary at 300,000, and let us now say that you have about 6 or 7 dependents, mother, father, brother, sisters, and what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to be sharing that money, equally amongst the 6 of them. Now, do you know what it means? You're actually going to be earning ultimately less than 4,000 naira, or 1,000 naira in a day. If you share that whole money amongst everybody, so even you are not only poor at your level of earning 300,000. You've become very vulnerable. So I don't think we're just dealing with statistics, as it were, just like we're laying our statistics, we're going to do digital. Somebody just sent to me something this morning, and I say, please spare me. Oh, go out and do this. Oh, this is going to happen. Oh, we're going to insure this and that. Talk is cheap.
Okay. All right, now reports actually say that Nigeria lost 20 trillion naira to the CBN governor's, naira policy. Now, what is the implication of this, for national development?
Lost to who? Where is the 20 trillion naira coming from? Where did they lose it to? You see, because a lot of people do not want to appreciate the fact that a cashless policy is good for everybody ultimately. Okay, and this cashless policy didn't start yesterday. But we're just used to, a week after that thing was introduced, you saw people throwing around money in parties. You saw it. Okay, so when you're talking about loss to what? Loss to who? Loss trading what? Loss saving what? That would be the primary question. I think the figure is very suspect. Against an economy that had 3.2 trillion circulating, where did the 20 trillion come? I hope it's not sounding like, the story of our missing $20 billion from oil. So, you see, sometimes people want to hype things to make it look more serious than it is. But having said that, remember that in my opening, I talked about 2 classes of people, if you may, or 2 economies. Okay, the formal economy, which somehow all of us are managing to survive in. And these days, you'll be shocked that even these boys who are carrying jerry cans fuels in jerry can have become a little innovative. I'm talking about my personal experience.
That's right.
They now cluster around a POS person. Okay, you pay the POS person, and it begins to transfer to them. So that's for the formal economy. This can happen. But when you now talk about that informal economy, which you have allowed, or what you call the race sector, which you have allowed to disconnect totally and completely, this is where you have your issues. And unfortunately, this is where the bulk of our population is. If that's what you're talking about, madam, yes, it won't be 20 trillion in naira. It will be 20 trillion in value. Okay, because what it is you have done is that you have cut out more than 70%, of your country, of your citizens, from your financial inclusion, circle.
We will be having another monetary policy committee meetings by Monday, Tuesday. In the last 3-4 meetings, we have seen them jack up the interest rates, and largely because they are not targeting inflation, which they feel like, as you have mentioned, has continued to shoot. Now, this is not abating. The last time they raised prices, some of your contemporaries, economists, argued that because the factors driving inflations are not something within their realms, that raising prices will not ultimately terminate if we put prices beyond the ordinary citizens. Now we have seen a raise with the inflation. In your opinion and your evaluations, are you looking at another raise in interest rates? What can we begin to do to support just an interest rate rise as a primary function of targeting?
Even if you lowered it, even if you made it zero, you won't still get these investments, because the first primary consideration, money is the biggest coward. Money is one thing that's if you had a bank, if you were managing director of a bank and your father was your customer and somebody said that bank is distressed, he'll probably be heading to the bank to take his money before calling you. Okay, so that is how money is. And I think the mistake we've made is to think that, lending money is what grows business. No, that's not what grows business. What grows business is being able to develop a proper attitude. First and foremost, the statistics. Your business has to be statistically, put together. Growing business development plans that are bankable. And again, there is something they call in development patient capital. And that patient capital is something that, no, we don't have any financial windows for it. And that's why most of the grants you see being granted are coming from outside windows. That is the kicker that is missing. Because the moment you give somebody a loan, the first consideration is that he needs to pay that loan back. And then for him to qualify to get that loan, a major consideration is that he has to be able to secure the loan against something that has a forced sale value, that has a value of more than 150% of his
actual borrowing.
Yes. You understand? So it's not the way to go. And that is why those who can borrow don't need the money. Those who need it can get it to borrow. So if you don't rejig it, and first and foremost, this is a country that has 53 million hectares of land.
Terrible.
Less than 0.5% of it in use. We don't have one commercial farm. I'd gone into a program and they said, the Ministry of Industry is busy building processing plants for Zobo, hibiscus, this, that. I said, okay, please, good idea. They want to build these plants. Now, can you show me one hibiscus plant or farm, that goes more than 2 kilometers? As against where other people are building belts. So when people want to talk about what can bring down inflation, now you should talk about the days we were busy. Almost every land you could think that was free had either palm, tobacco, cocoa, rubber, not even cassava. Cassava came. No, you now had large plantations that were doing what they call volume that could unlock value. So it's if you ask me now to go and borrow, by the end of the day, what am I doing? I'm going to take that money to China to buy my machines. I'm going to probably be getting my raw materials from China. So you are helping to grow another economy because you are not looking at your STI. And what do I mean by that? You're not looking at your science, technology, and innovation as the basis of thinking and growing Nigeria. You'll be shocked that even the chairs you're sitting on now might be made by a Nigerian company, but every component of this chair is imported. Every. With all our whole wooded areas and our forestries. So until you begin to think development and not think, business. Now, you must be able to have that meeting point where development will now begin to meet business.
Okay. When you say these things, for average Nigerians, we are a bit at a loss. And so in our own case, is it a function of the government understanding that this is the way to go, or we cannot find the economic managers to direct us on this part? Because what we have basically done in the face of everything that has happened is continue to rely on the monetary authorities to even provide policy direction for the fiscal space. The trade space has completely even gone comatose. We only see them talking about AFTA and refining the AFTA policies without even pushing for what we are going to sell in the after market space. So what exactly is our problem as a people?
A delink. The major problem is that you have a delink between the national and the subnationals vis-a-vis the utilization of resources. I give you a very typical example. Federal government has promoted a policy they call NATIP. NATIP is about the faults. There was all these policies, agricultural revolution, this. But you're doing this and you don't have land. Okay? If you look at the whole agricultural lands owned by the federal government, you might give and take maybe 20,000 hectares of land flung here and in between. The lands are in the states. Now, you are not aligning your agri policies, okay, with the policies of the states. So that when you're talking about the physical meeting, your financial policies, it begins to your monetary policy. There now begins to be this synergy that is seamless. So you can begin to now talk about what you call common shared infrastructure. So you're no longer talking about Zamfara State. You're talking about Zamfara, Kebbi, Sokoto. Okay, now driving towards Kaduna, Niger. So you now begin to build this economic belt that is now land-based, that is now people-based, that is now STI supported. But what do you have? A federal government that comes and says, oh, we want to diversify into agriculture. With which land? With which people? With which, what do they call it? Research institutes. Now, that's one. Now, two, you come to the mining sector. Okay, last time I was on the show here, they were showing some people carrying diggers and shovels, and they were scratching the ground. And I asked the interviewer, why don't you please pull up a mine in Zambia? Now, what you're going to be seeing will be maybe, at your first glance, 30 bulldozers. At the second glance, another 40 or 50 excavators. Okay? And at another glance, you'll be seeing a small airplane that's flying around the place. That's what a mine should look like. Because by African standards, a small mine is classified as a mine that has a value of $250 million. That's a small mine. So if you don't think properly, and I think the major thing is that you have very good people that write very flowery speeches for you. I am going to give everybody a job. I am going to do XYZ. I'm going to do ABC. Now, but there's what they call matching. You must be able to match skills with demands. And this is where your needs assessment, needs to be carried out. And I think that's where the problem is.
Okay, now, when it comes to the citizens, what can actually be done to cushion the impact of the inflation on them? Because sometimes even when the inflation drops, it doesn't seem to reflect, especially when you go to the markets. And according to the NBS statistics, the rate of the cost of foods actually it was responsible for the rise, is part responsible for the rise in inflation, especially when it comes to just staple foods like bread, cereal, yams, tubers, and all that. So what can be done to cushion the impact of inflation?
Again, we need to decouple. You're talking about citizens. They're also the masses. So which one are we talking about here?
Because even when it comes to the inflation as well, there's a report that says Naira, fuel scarcity and inflation has pushed 24 million Nigerians into hunger. And even coupled with the the CBN policy, you have so many people staying at home because they can't even, the fares have increased and they can't even go to work.
That's what I'm saying. So are we talking about the citizens or the masses?
They're all the same.
No, they're not. Okay, the citizens are those the masses are the mob. Okay, the citizens are those you're able to capture in your formal structures. Okay, now the masses are those that you're talking about, madam. And the only way the masses can become citizens is statistics. Okay, and the best way to be able to get statistics is to be able to drill down, do what you call real-time evaluation of people. And the only way you can do that is to be able to build the institutions that can be able to pull this data on a real-time basis. Now, I'll give you a typical example. When we were born, birth and death were done at general hospitals that were at the local levels. Okay? Now, you had people, education inspectors and health inspectors were not state officials. They were officials of the local government systems. Now, with the disappearance, if you may, of the local, there's a total disconnect. First, I told you about the disconnect between the national and the subnational. Now, there is a total and even more, disruptive disconnect between the local governments where these 24 million people, again, a presumption. Because if I say to you, madam, show me the states there are, these 24 million people, who are they? So, because if you don't know them, how do you help them? And that's why I said to you that the major challenge we have is that we've not been able to draw data. Somebody says to you that Nigerians were 200 and something million. Where are they? And these are assumptions that must be corrected. And in trying to plan a census, we are not now also planning this census right. And let me tell you why I say so. It's not supposed to be an Abuja thing. The person that's supposed to be making this announcement should be, so have somebody at the state who is saying the same thing he's saying, have somebody at the local government who is saying the same thing he's saying, have somebody at the wards who is saying the same thing he's saying, so that you're not going to be doing it a bottom-up approach where the national begins to now do the oversight of now picking this data. Until you have that data subset, you are going to be just wishing things. And that, unfortunately, that's what we're doing.
Just a quick follow-up before we let Dr. go. It's the question she asked. We have seen all kinds of reports that is beginning to suggest the doomsday.
Yes.
We had flooding in 32 states of the 36 last year,
yes,
which impacted on food production.
Yes.
The insecurity is still there, which stopped farmers from showing up, even on the small percentage of arable lands that we seem to put into use.
Yes.
NIMET is saying we are going to have a repeat of that,
yes,
that flooding. In fact, they are saying the rains we have seen in Abuja are even a false start. People should not even bother going to the farms.
Yes.
If we are not producing, like you said, and there are no prospects to do anything different, if the government is now in a lull waiting for a new government to come in, is there anything we can do? Is there a low-hanging fruit? We are not even taking anything out of the windfall, sort of, occasioned by the Russian-Ukrainian crisis.
Beautiful.
What can we do to avert a doomsday?
A very simple thing. You talked about the floods. The floods were not only rain-based. The floods were as a consequence of the release of water from Lago Dam in Cameroon, and they give us enough notice. Now, all you need to do, that thing has been in the pipeline. There was a dam, a dam that was supposed to have been built somewhere in Bauchi that was supposed to be capturing that water and then channeling it back into our tributaries and rivers. That would have reduced that problem to a very large extent. I think it's called the Hafsin Dawa or something dam. That's the name of our dam. It was designed about 30 years ago. Nobody has ever done anything about it. Now, people keep talking about farm. Nobody does the kind of farm we do anymore because of climate change. What climate change has done is that you wake up in the morning and it seems it's about to rain, and in the next 2 hours, you want to jump into a river because your body is boiling. That's the effects of climate change. Now, what people are doing is that there's a place they call Ibiza in Spain. Now, I want you to probably Google Ibiza. After Ibiza is supposed to be some entertainment place, but 40 kilometers
away from Ibiza,
driving away from Ibiza, on 2 sides of the road, you're going to be seeing greenhouses. Imagine a situation where from here to Lokoja, you're driving by the road, you're seeing greenhouses lined up, pepper, tomato, radish, onions, cucumber, name it, veggies. And then at the end of that place or behind it, you're seeing our ranches that are now using, the waste from those veggies to be able to now grow our livestock. What do you think will happen? I didn't say go and do it in Zamfara. Abuja alone will feed Africa. So it's all about us not thinking things through. It's all about us, everybody sitting in a room and then thinking. That's one problem. The second one is now the lack of synergies between MDAs. You'll be very, very amazed and shocked that a lot of these critical agencies that are supposed to be aligning don't have any kind of relationship. And then the budgetary system and the expenditure system even makes it worse. This one is doing this at level 4. The same thing somebody has done at level 4, somebody is starting as preliminary. So I think that's what those are the issues.
Interesting. Very insightful conversations where we have had with Dr. Okengu, putting a spotlight on what we need to do correctly, what we need to start rethinking, and the knowledge we need to start discarding, as it were, that are no longer useful to 21st century governance, if you like. I want to thank you very much for finding time to be here.
Pleasure.
And I hope when we come knocking again, you will make time for us to continue to provide this perspective, and hopefully somebody who needs to take critical steps about what we need to do correctly is listening to you this morning. And even our institutions, we can begin to unpack whatever it is that we're putting out as knowledge in the 21st century. Once again, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.